L'chaim v'livracha, to life and to blessings. Hi. How can there be evil in God's world? How could Bondi Beach have happened? A simple question. A simple question. So, when I was in high school, I did an essay on Dante's Inferno. If anybody knows what I'm talking about. And you have the Godhead and you have the Satan, and there's a battle between them. All good comes from God, Godhead, and all evil comes from the Satan, right? And there's a battle, right? So there, that explains. God gives Satan, you know, I guess, if you will, I don't know, to get whatever it is, to do the evil. So it's not coming from God, so we always can feel good about God. Right? For a Jew, that's idolatry. Because that's not the oneness of God. That's not really. No, the evil comes from God. He allows it to happen. He allows it to happen, right? Why he allows it? Ultimately, as we've spoken, everything, there's a duality the way God creates the world, right? Left, up, down, in, out, day, night, good and evil. And he does that ultimately on a simple level, freedom of choice, on a simple level. Much more deeper than that, why God would do that. On a simple level, that gives us freedom of choice. It's all coming from God. Question, of course, me, how? How do we understand that? Can make the statement, but this is Chabad. And Chabad means we have to understand as best as we can. And Baruch Hashem, that's where we have the Alter Rebbe to teach us. Welcome to Tanya today. I'm Rabbi Ronnie Fine, coming to you from Chabad Zichron Kadeshim in Montreal, Canada, where it's a privilege and a pleasure to share with you the Tanya. We're in the 6th chapter, and in one word, this chapter is umas, the opposite. Up, down, right, left, in, out, night, day, good and evil. God creates the opposite in us. First, we're talking in us, right? Because we're trying to understand here our animal soul. So God gives the godly soul everything of its makeup, as we learned in chapters 2, 3, 4, 5. And now we're learning the makeup of the animal soul. Excuse me. So we explained everything that we do, we speak, or we think. You need power to do that. Where does the power come from? It comes from God. Exactly. It comes from God. Depending on what you are thinking, speaking, and doing, will be depending on what kind of power you're getting from God. If you're surrendered to God to do what he wants, and you don't feel any separateness from him, but you are totally aligned with his will, doing his will because it's his will, period. You think that, you speak it, and you do that. In that moment, you're getting from God's holiness, directly from him, direct. You're embraced by him, as we explained, right? Previously. That's what's happening, right? Metaphorically, I give a metaphor. I haven't seen this metaphor anywhere, but like a mother, when she gives food to her children, she's not really giving food. She's giving love, devotion that's embodied in food. She's giving her very self to her kids, embodied in the food. So likewise, God gives us power, vitality, energy, right? Directly from Him when we think, speak, and do something that is surrendered to Him, that is in order to, when you're aligned with Him in that moment of what you're doing, right? On the other hand, if you're not doing that, then you're getting from what we call acharaim, the other side, the backside, or klipa, a shell, right? What's a klipa? What does it mean, a shell? So it means like this: getting direct from God. So there's no shell. You're getting direct power, energy, vitality. But if it's coming from God when you're not aligned with Him, so then it's descending that divine power, chain-like descent, with many tzimtzumim, contractions on the divine light, right? That diminishes the vitality to the point it's lower than it's so greatly diminished that it becomes that light as if it's in exile. Just like the fruit, so to speak, is in exile in the peel of the fruit, right? It's covered up. Okay, there it's doing for the protection and so on and so forth. Fine. But it's a metaphor, right? It's in captivity. And it's mastered by its captors, that divine light. So it's coming directly from God, but through many contractions to such a degree that it is separate from holiness. It doesn't feel connected because it isn't. That's why, listen to this, it's very powerful, powerful. This world contains what is called world of Klipan Siter Acher, and that's why the affairs of this world are severe and evil, and the wicked prevail. Because where is, excuse me, where in your world or in the world is it aligned with the divine will, surrendered to it, that is getting directly from God? Point out how many places besides this room right now and other rooms like this. But think about the entire world. Less than 1%. Less than 1%. I mean, I'm just stabbing whatever, right? Less than 1%. That means this world is getting vitality, not direct from God, but through Klipa. So therefore, what's going to happen as a result, since it is Klipa, it is separate from God. It's not a sense of being connected to God. The people and things, not people and things of this world, right? Therefore, it's a severe world. It's harsh. And wicked people prevail. Now they prevail as that's why, by the way, it takes real faith not to go in the ways of the wicked. Because you see that, and they get somewhere. Now, they're not aligned, and in the end, it's not a life, and so on and so forth. But, that's in the moment, it seems to be a good path. Is that clear? Very powerful idea. Okay. Well, where does actual evil come from? So this world is animated, right? This cup, right? Coffee. First time I'm having coffee in a few days. Hi. Hi. What's animating it? Klipa, right? The only way it would be animated by something more is if it was aligned with the divine purpose, right? Drinking it for a divine purpose, saying a blessing on it, and so on and so forth, then you can align it. But naturally, everything is klipa. Okay, that's the natural state of everything in this world. But where does evil now get its vitality? That's not acts of evil. That's just the nature of this world, right? That's just the nature of this world is klipa. God's presence isn't obvious, right? Not in this cup of coffee, not in the breakfast that we had, right? By the way, if you come here, you get breakfast. You get a lot of good things, right? So he explains the klipa is divided into two levels. The lowest level is what we call shalish klipas hatmeyas, which is the three completely unholy klipa. Comes from the verse from Yecheskel, the divine chariot that concealed godliness is described as a storm wind, a great cloud, and a flaring fire. That's complete unholy, a complete unholiness, right? And from there comes the vitality to all the things that are to all negative things, all things that are not fitting to eat, all acts that are in a violation of God's commandment. So if you think evil, right? If you think evil or you say something that's evil, right? Or you do something that's evil, you're getting your vitality from this lower level that's even a further greater contraction on the divine light. So much so, we're going to learn later more about it in chapter 8, right? And it's completely completely less than it's worse than the natural state of everything in this world. It's worse than your animal soul. So what we have over here is holiness, when you do something holy. We have evil, that's shalish klipos hatmeyas, completely cut off, right, from God. Again, we'll learn more about that later in chapter 8, actually. And we have klipas noiga, the middle ground, which we're going to learn more in chapter 7. But what do we learn now that we know? It's why the wicked prevail, because the nature of this world is as such that klipa is dominant. The klipa that's dominant is not the evil klipa, but just that which is, as we'll see, like the middle ground, right? But that's the nature of this world. So therefore, the nature of this world is, people are not running to do godly acts. They're running to do things for themselves, right? How does that happen? Tzimtzum. The light of God is so diminished, right? So there's a metaphor for this klipa. I gave the metaphor for holiness, but the metaphor for klipa is when you have to give your enemy a gift, right? It's a metaphor, so it doesn't matter why, right? I don't know. In business, you have to give your enemy a gift, right? Whatever, you have to do it, right? How do you give them the gift? Not like the mother, she gives the food with a smile, with a warmth, with love and devotion, and right? How do you give it? You don't look the person in the eyes. You don't look in the eyes, and you actually throw it over your back. Like you give it like, here, you know. That's the metaphor of God giving vitality, that which is not aligned with him, over the back. That's why it's also called, right? It's called acharaim, the back side. Right, the backside, don't give me your back. No, that's an insult, right? When you look at a person, you look them in the face, you look them in the eyes, right? Then you're connecting. But don't give me the back. So that's the metaphor. You give your enemy. So God's giving that which is against God, vitality. That which is against God. Again, why is he doing it? As I said, on a simple level, is freedom of choice that we would have. Otherwise, there'd be no freedom of choice. But that's not the point over here. What we're learning and what's important for us to keep focused is me. What makes me up, right? What is my makeup? So we learned 4 chapters of the godly soul, and now we're going to learn chapters 6, 7, and 8, the animal soul. So what makes up my animal soul is an animal soul that is getting vitality from God. Klipas noiga. Klipas noiga is a translucent klipa. In other words, there's some good in it, as opposed to the completely evil one. There's no good in it. There's no good in it at all. Is that clear? Does that make sense? So we're going to continue with this idea in tomorrow's class, understanding our makeup. So that's the animal soul, the two components in us, on what the kind of vitality. What's really important is to appreciate that every moment in life we're living. How are you living? God gives vitality. The question is just from where's it coming? Where's the vitality coming from? Right? Is it coming from Klipa? Is it coming from Kedusha, from holiness? Right? Every moment we have life. God's giving us life. So what kind of life? So if I understand that where I'm at is my animal soul talking to me, so then I know it's my animal soul, so I'm getting from Klipa. If I, am aligned with the divine will and doing what Hashem wants, I know I'm getting from Kedusha. That's the important message over here that we have to bear in mind. Okay. All right. Folks, amazing. As always, thank you. Unfortunately, there will not be Rambam today. I have to do a funeral.
Real?
Huh?
Is evil real?
Good question. Is evil real? That's an excellent question. Well, later on, we're going to deal with that. Chapter 27, if I recall correctly. But in other words, how should I look at evil? We should not look at it as being real. It's the absence of holiness. It feels like it's real, and people get scared, and now they don't want to go out and publicly to display their Jewishness because evil is real. That's only if you believe that Klipa is truly real. It's only there to give me freedom of choice to choose. It's not there for any other reason. So it's not truly real, even though humanly it feels real. But from a godly perspective, and that's what the Alter Rebbe is allowing us to perceive, it ain't real. And therefore, we're not frightened by evil. We're not frightened by evil. That's that's what this is saying. Thank you, Pesach. That's what this is saying, that we're not frightened by it. It doesn't control me, right? Because I get my vitality directly from Kedusha, God's holiness. And from that perspective, evil is like it's like an ego, empty air. It's like that the macho guy wants to show that he's like, right? He's just full of air. He's just full of air, right? There's nothing to him.
No substance.
There's no such. Now, maybe you could throw a good punch, right? Right, but he's a non-entity because he's just full of himself. There's nothing good or godly there. So we're not taken by that, which is whoa.